It's a new year, which means new opportunities and new things happening here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have new laws, and guess what? New leadership in our state capitol. It's Save the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. We'll be right back to discuss what's new and happening in the Commonwealth. Happy New Year to everyone out there in Hampton Roads, Greater Commonwealth of Virginia, and all that are listening across the world to Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and we want to welcome you here to our first show of 2022. We've got our producer here, always on hand, also known as DJ Scandalous, Marvin Folks. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Dr. Claville.
Absolutely. Listen, 2021, in spite of it all, it was a phenomenal year. We were able to make it through, and not only did we overcome, but we persevered and we thrived.
Yes.
And we're looking for greater in 2022. You know, I hope everyone had a phenomenal Christmas holiday and even better New Year's Day. Because, look, I know we have a lot going on, right? A lot going on in the world. We know that COVID is still surging here and there, but we know that a lot of education's out there. Persons are getting vaccinated, individuals staying healthy, medicine is getting better, science is getting better, and we're getting better. And our goal here is just like it was when we first started, to bring movers, shakers, and policymakers to you, to the community, to discuss issues that are important to your lives every single day. So we're fortunate and blessed to be able to bring this broadcast, bring this show to you. It's an initiative of the Center for African American Public Policy here at Norfolk State University, and we're broadcasting live here on the campus of the Spartan Nation.
That's right.
At the Norfolk State University at WNSB. Yes, it's the new sound of Hot 91, the soul of VA. Absolutely. So we want to thank again all of you who have supported us in 2021, and we look for your support in 2022 because, listen, we've got a great lineup of guests coming up in this new season. We got great topics, great engagement. Again, we're going to continue with our engagement of our policymakers, our elected officials, candidates who are running for public office, individuals in the community that are making a difference and doing phenomenal things on a community level, on a citywide level, a statewide level, and also you, the listener, taking your calls, listening to what you have to say, because this is an interactive show. And it's not just about what we think and what we provide as far as facts, but we want to know what you think. What you think about the issues that are going on, and more specifically, Marvin, the solutions. It's all about the solutions for you to take control of your life and your community. Marvin, how was your New Year's Day?
My New Year's Day was great. Spent some time with my family, got some time to unwind. And of course, gave the man above some praise.
Absolutely.
Was in the house of the Lord, and it was wonderful.
It's interesting you mentioned in church on New Year's Eve. It's something that we've done. I like to say, since I was yet in my mother's womb, we would go to church every New Year's Eve called Watch Night Service.
That's right.
And this year it's the same. Of course, we were safe and doing our very best, social distancing inside the sanctuary. I know we streamed. I know a lot of churches streamed as well. And, we gave the history of Watch Night Service. And it's something that is very near and dear to African Americans and our tradition, our church, our worship. And it's something that I'm glad to see things continue on no matter what.
Even in the pandemic.
Yes.
Safely. Mask and temperature checks.
Absolutely. Because, again, we got to remain careful. We got to remain safe. I want to welcome everyone back who's coming also to the campus of Norfolk State University. Of course, we're coming back in the spring. Announcements have gone out, and we're looking for a phenomenal spring semester. Congratulations again to all the graduates in the fall, including our very own DJ Scandalous, who graduated with his master's in cybersecurity. and who's looking on to do greater, who's currently looking at his PhD, secured his PhD in computer science. So again, that's the great thing about this area, great thing about this campus, great thing about this Spartan Nation is that we just don't stop. We continue to achieve, continue to achieve, continue to achieve. So let's get right into the show. So if you've seen the advertisements, we have a new look, but it's the same content. The content is giving you the facts, not telling you what to think or how to think, but giving it to you straight so that you can make a more well-informed decision for yourself, your family, and your community. So in the first half of the show, we're looking at 2022, a new year, new leadership here in the Commonwealth. In the first half, we're going to talk about new laws that are going into effect January 1st, that have gone into effect and that are going to really impact our lives moving forward. In the second half of the show, we're going to talk about the new leadership we have in Richmond. That's right. We're going to inaugurate a new governor, a new lieutenant governor, and a new attorney general here in the Commonwealth of Virginia in this month, actually in a couple of weeks. And with that comes a new agenda.
That's right.
With that comes a new direction. With that comes new fights on the floor, in the media and the like. But out of it, what we want, like always, is the greatest opportunities for the people of the Commonwealth to live the American dream and to do the very best that they can do and achieve their goals and dreams. I mean, that's really the name of the game.
That's what it's all about. I mean, that's what they say America's for.
That's it. That is exactly right. So, Marvin, let's take a look at some of the laws that went into effect January 1st. Now, we're not going to go through all of them, but I want to take a look at several that I believe are very important to us. First, I want to take a look at the minimum wage. That's right. The minimum wage has gone up to $11 an hour.
From $9.50.
From $9.50. So Virginia employers, according to Senate Bill 7, Virginia employers will now be required to pay their employees a minimum of $11 per hour. Now, the Virginia minimum wage, according to the Senate Bill 7, was increased from the federal minimum to $9.50 an hour on May 1st, 2021. So the $11 rate is set to last until January 1st, 2023. Now, this is when the rate will increase to $12 an hour.
Oh, wow.
And then the Virginia minimum wage will increase until it reaches $15 an hour in 2026. That is huge. That's huge for a family, someone who's working, that's trying to support their family, maybe a child or two.
College students.
That's huge exactly. That's huge for college students. You know, that means that you are the work that you're putting in per hour, you're having more opportunity, more purchase power, more opportunity to do a lot of different things. So as a young college student, young professional, Marvin, what does that increase mean for you and your peers?
That increase is tremendous because we all know that going to school is not cheap. You know, sometimes, people get scholarships and things of that nature, but you just can't always survive off of just scholarships and grants. You need some residual income. And now that residual income is being elevated, that's going to help out tremendously. And, so you can study a little more and not have to worry so much about finances.
You mentioned, residual income, and a lot of students are having to work. A lot of students are having to foot the bill. And a lot of students are having to bear the burden, part of the burden, if not all the burden, of their own college education. And it's not because, again, like you said, they're not getting scholarships, not getting grants or loans or whatever the case may be, but they don't want to get into the debt, which is good, right? Less debt means more buying power.
That's right.
More ability and more ability for yourself in the future, more opportunity to be mobile, and more opportunity for you to seek the opportunity that you want. So this is a major increase, I believe. And as you talked about from your real life experience, not just for students, but for the Commonwealth as a whole. Now, from a political standpoint, I will say that one thing that happened, we had Delegate Cliff Hayes, who's our alum and also phenomenal public servant, who's a friend of this show.
In the House District?
Absolutely. In the House District here, representing parts, mainly parts of Chesapeake. He talked about how on the political side, this is good, but they really want it. The Democrats really want it to get $15 an hour today on January 1st. But what happened was the compromise was to have it in stages, right? Yeah. So that's why you see these stages. It goes from $9.50 federally to $11. It's at $11 an hour now. Now it goes to $12 in 2023 and $15 in 2026. So you think about it, in 12 months, for the most part, everybody's going to get a $1 raise. And after that, in another 36 months, you're going to get a $3 raise. So one additional dollar for each year. So, it works out, but at the same time, I understand from a business standpoint, especially small businesses having to incur that additional cost of paying their employees, from $9.50 all the way up to $15 an hour. That's a lot of money. That's $5.50 per hour. So you probably have to scale back employees.
Maybe
right?
Hours.
Scale back hours. So this helps our small businesses and others help to bear the brunt of making sure that all of us are able to get the full value of not just the products that we create, but the hours that we put in as well. So again, all of it is about, the saying goes, all politics is local. And this actually shows just how local politics works.
Yep. Now, speaking of local politics, I saw something that's going to be going into effect, probably jumping a little bit, but they're going to be changing some dates from May to November.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, that's exactly what I wanted that I had in mind as well. When we talk about local politics, we talk about local elections as well. So let's take a look at what's happening now in our local elections. So now municipal elections, Senate Bill 1157, municipal elections are moving from May to November. So what does this mean? According to the Senate Bill 1157, the new law moving all municipal elections for council members and school board members from May to November officially went into effect July 1st, 2021, but it only applies to elections held after January 1st, 2022. So what does this mean? This means that localities that previously elected their local officials in May will now cast those votes during November instead. So let's break that down. We talk about voter suppression. Voter suppression happens in many ways. Voter suppression happens by misinforming individuals about elections. Voter suppression happens also by elections being held at inopportune times where you don't get the largest amount of turnout. Now, let's take a look at municipal elections. Municipal elections deal with local elections. All politics is local.
That's right.
We just talked about it. This is a perfect example of how all politics is local. So what happens is that our city council members here in the Commonwealth, our school board members here in the Commonwealth, are all elected in May, sometimes June, right? So what happens is you don't have a lot of individuals that are going to the polls and voting. Schools are getting out, people are going on vacation, and the like, right? I know in this area where we are blessed to have a lot of institutions of higher education, including Norfolk State University, and a lot of our students are engaged in these elections and campaigning and canvassing and so forth. Now, what's significant about November? November, that's when we elect our president. That's when we elect our governor. That's when we elect our U.S. congresspersons. That's when we elect our U.S. senators. That's when a lot of major elections are held. And people are programmed to say, okay, I'm voting first Tuesday in November, right? It's in the Constitution. We've been doing it since the country, the inception, the signing of the Constitution. November 2nd, the first Tuesday in November, that's when we vote. So now persons are having to run in elections, municipal elections, and they're going to have to vote in November, during the time of our general election for our governor that's usually held, our U.S. congresspersons, our president, our U.S. senators, and the like. So basically, we're going to get more turnout. Marvin, I think this is good for democracy.
Smart move, because we were a part of the elections back in June, right?
That's right. That's right. So we were part of that election, that general election. And a lot of times, now what we're going to have also, you're going to have what's called primary elections. So primaries, they're still going to take place. Those are elections that determine which individual will run for that particular party moving forward in the general election. So that happens. All right. So, for example, in June, we had the primary election for the Democratic candidate for governor. Of course, we had a slate of 5 to 6 individuals that were running, and Terry McAuliffe was chosen to run as the Democratic candidate. The Republicans did what's called a caucus, a convention that was not actually held. So you had a convention that persons were not in, but they cast their ballot to where they ranked their choices. So it was a ranked convention, right? It's something different, but they got their choice, Glenn Youngkin, who is now our governor-elect, right? So that's still going to happen in June. All right, so don't think you're not going to cast votes in June, but you're going to cast votes for the person you believe should run for your party. But the general election is going to be held in November. So, again, I think it's good for democracy.
It's like a 2-for-1.
Yeah.
Kind of.
We can look at it, exactly. We can look at it that way. So what happens is that now, if you're running for local school board, if you're running for city council, you will now be in that November election. Your name will be on that ballot. Again, I say it again, I think this is a good thing for democracy. More people are involved. Now, let's talk about the primary election. Senate Bill 1148 changed to June primary election day. So the Virginia primary election, typically held on the second Tuesday in June, has been moved to the third Tuesday in June. So in other words, potential candidates will also have until the third Tuesday in June to file nomination and candidacy papers for officers determined by a November general election. So now, as we just talked about, you still have to run in the primary. But now you have until the third Tuesday in June in order to run. Now, what happens there? You still have that opportunity to file for your nomination. So, in other words, if you didn't file before a certain time prior to that, you weren't able to run. But now you have up until that time to actually file. Now, again, it gives an opportunity for individuals to enter the race. It gives an opportunity for individuals to cast their, throw their hat into the ring and see what happens. But ultimately, it boils down to, I believe, speaking to the people in grassroots. As the former grassroots organizer and campaign consultant, it all boils down to speaking to your voters, getting your voters to the polls to vote for you. So it doesn't matter. When you file, it doesn't matter. Well, you have to file within the time delays. But it doesn't matter if you file early or late. The question becomes, Marvin, will you be able to get your voters to the polls? And I think that's what that boils down to. So we talked about the election itself. We talked about the minimum wage going up. We talked about the general election for city council members and school board members starting now. You will vote for them in November as opposed to June, but the primary will be held in June for those individuals who will be in primaries. Now, we also want to take a look at, we talked about voter suppression. District Award, House Bill 2198 is district award-based residency requirements for local election. This particular bill really helps to even the playing field as it relates to individuals who are running for city council or school board. Here's what happens in this particular bill. School board members and local government officials elected to represent a specific ward or district will now only be elected by qualified voters of that district or ward. So what does this do? This new law states that these elections must not be made by the entire locality. Instead, just the specific area the candidate would represent. So Virginia law previously allowed what's called at-large voting for these kinds of candidates. So let me break this down for you. At-large elections was a way to suppress the votes of newly engaged and newly registered African American voters after the passage of the Voting Rights Act, 1965. What does that mean? So basically, now that individuals, African Americans, had the opportunity for their voting power to be heard, a lot of localities, a lot of local cities and towns changed from electing their individuals, their representatives, by districts to what's called at large, which means that now everyone in the city votes for the top. If let's just say you have 4 city council seats available and there are 8 people in the race. Now you're able to vote in as a city to say, I want these individuals 1, 2, 3, 4 to represent me or our city in the local city council. Now, if you have more white Americans who were in that city at that time, then they're still going to elect their candidate of choice, which diluted and suppressed the vote of newly empowered African American voters after 1965 Voting Rights Act.
Because of segmentation of being in districts.
Exactly. So now what happened was, what this law does, it now creates district award only. So that means if you live in a certain area, a certain district, I should say from, Virginia Beach Boulevard all the way to, let's just say, downtown, right? You live in that area, then only you can vote for a person who lives in that area to represent you on city council. The rest of the city cannot vote on that for that particular candidate. So what does that do? That allows the community to choose one person that they know, that grew up in their community or works in their community and lives in their community, that shops in their community, that cuts their grass in their community, that walks the streets of their community, that maybe takes their morning or afternoon run in their community, that goes to church or worships in their community, that visits neighbors in their community, that drives up and down the street in their community to represent them and their community interests, as opposed to someone who lives on the other side of town, let's just say Ocean View, voting for a person to represent you in this area.
Although it's the same city.
Same city, but again, we all know you can have the same city, but you go 3 blocks north, 3 blocks south, 3 blocks east, 3 blocks west, it's a different community. So that's why community is so important. And that's why this show is so important, because it allows individuals of like mind, individuals who are there, that understand how they live and want issues to be discussed on that impact them from their perspective to be heard. It's all about your voice being able to be heard. Now, this district award-based residency requirement for local elections really didn't affect Norfolk, because in the 1980s, a lawsuit was filed in order to challenge at-large districts and outlaw them from a federal standpoint. But our neighbor of Virginia Beach actually still had at-large districts. I think there were a couple of others within the Commonwealth, but Virginia Beach was the largest and the most influential. And there was a lawsuit that was filed, a federal lawsuit by NSU alone, that actually helped to push this law into effect. So with that, and this shows the power of an individual. This individual filed what's called, they went to the federal court themselves. They didn't hire a high-powered law firm. They said, I want to challenge this myself. And we actually had that person on the show in 2021 to talk about it. So what this shows is that the power of the people, the power of you, the power of a thought, the power of your passion to do good, to be what's called a servant leader, a public servant leader, to change the course of time, the trajectory of not just your life, but others around you, what you can do. And now we have it solidified in law through this particular House bill, House Bill 2198. That's major. That changes everything, because now the city of Virginia Beach will have more of a representative government, because it represents the people in that community, in that district, in that particular ward. So when we talk about progress, this is what progress looks like, right? This is what it actually looks like. And this is what people are voting for. They're voting for having their voice heard and having things happen for them, for the better. Now, there are a lot of other laws that are going into action and that have gone into action as of January 1st, such as ABC ending sale of most low alcohol beverages. There is also the law that goes into effect of ending of cosmetic testing on animals. The Humane Cosmetic Act puts an end to cosmetic testing on animals in Virginia and also prevents any further sales of cosmetics that have been tested on animals. This is, again, a win for to be more humane, to be more humane toward not just each other, but also our fellow animals, to make sure that we are treating them with the respect that,
all living creatures should have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Also, requirements for prescription drug price transparency. Now, this affects a lot of senior citizens. This affects a lot of us. This is H. Bill 2007. It's a new law that directs the Virginia Department of Health to contract a nonprofit data service organization to create a database of prescription drug pricing. So, in other words, health carriers, pharmacy benefits managers, and drug manufacturers will be required to report drug price information to this organization. I think that's huge because now it gives us more transparency to know what we're being charged, for, again, the marvel of medicine, the marvel of science. Again, we're blessed to live in a country where, we can create and put money toward research in our higher education institutions, in our federal agencies, state agencies, and create these products, create these solutions to our problems that help society. So, again, it just baffles me. I'm amazed every time we see these things that happens, these new drugs, these new innovations. At the same time, it should be fair. It should be equitable across the board. And again, this pricing is going to help a lot of our senior citizens, a lot of members of our community who sometimes have to choose, Marvin, should I get my medicine this today or this month, or should I ration my medication? Now they have an opportunity to see what they're being charged, how they're being charged, and really to make a better and a healthier decision for their lives. It's about transparency. And that's actually huge for us. Finally, I want to mention one more law that goes into effect, which is very important as it relates to, us being safe on the roads. It's the increase in motor vehicle liability coverage, Senate Bill 1182. Starting here in 2022, this in motor vehicle liability insurance will cover more in cases of bodily injury or death of a person. In other words, it's going to increase the policies between 2022 and 2025, which now covers $30,000 when one person is harmed or killed instead of $20,000. And in cases involving two people, the coverages go from $50,000 to $60,000. Again, just more opportunities to help to protect the people here in the Commonwealth. So that's just a snapshot of laws that are going into effect. That's a snapshot of things that have happened in our last legislative session. But in the second half of the show, in just a few moments, we're going to talk about what's going to happen. What can we expect in 2022 and beyond in this new legislative session with the new leadership we have in Richmond? This is Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and you're joining us here on the campus of Norfolk State University, here for our New Year, New Leadership in Virginia show. We'll be back in just a few moments for our second half. Stay tuned.
This Hot 91 Safety Holiday Drive tip is powered by Cooper Hurley Injury Lawyers, 333-3333.
This and every holiday season, don't you look forward to seeing your family and closest friends? Of course you do. Okay, let's agree on a few tips for your safety. Don't text and drive. Watch your speed. And a real good one, be patient. Finally, I ask that you do not drink and drive. Have a safe holiday weekend from Cooper Hurley Injury Lawyers and Hot 91, the soul of VA.
Cooper Hurley Injury Lawyers, 333-3333.
Program support sponsored in part by ALW Entertainment.
Are you ready? Ready to experience the joy? Experience the joy. A joyful holiday experience. Marvin Sapp. The Clark Sisters. Charles Jenkins. Leandria Johnson. And Ricky Dillard and New G. This Sunday, January 2nd, at the Hampton Coliseum, 4 p.m. Tickets, Ticketmaster, in the box office. A joyful holiday experience. Powered by Compassion International.
Welcome back at Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. We want to wish everyone a very happy new year here in 2022. We want to thank you all for joining us for our very first show of 2022. We hope that you had a phenomenal holiday season and also a safe holiday season. We know a lot of person was traveling. We know that there were maybe some traveling hiccups here and there, but we want to thank all of you for joining us here back on WNSB on the campus of Norfolk State University, the new sound of Hot 91, the soul of VA. And we've got our producer here, Marvin Folks, also known as DJ Scandalous, that you can hear every day in 2022, Monday through Friday from 2 to 6 p.m. Happy New Year to you, Marvin.
Happy New Year, man. 2021 was something else, but, we're blessed that we're here again, and State of the Water is still going strong, and the elections are changing up, but we're right there with it for all the great information.
We were. As a matter of fact, Norfolk State University partnered with our debate media partner, Wavy 10, which is the Nexstar Corporation, in order to host the gubernatorial roundtable. And the gubernatorial roundtable being hosted there, we were able to also work with our media partner. We know we hosted the first U.S. Senate debate here on campus in 2020, and we're excited to continue that relationship with Wavy here in this area, and to host and to broadcast these very important conversations across the entire Commonwealth. And with that, we know that we have a new governor that has been elected, and that new governor is Governor-elect Glenn Youngkin. And not just Glenn Youngkin as our new governor-elect, but we also have Lieutenant Governor-elect Winsome Sears and Attorney General-elect Jason Myers. And the great thing about all of these individuals who are actually our elects, who now would be no more elect, but actually governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, is that they're all from Hampton Roads, all from Virginia Beach. So, that is a phenomenal point that, and the impact, it shows the impact that this area has. Not only that, but we know that our current governor, Governor Ralph Northam, is also from this area. So Hampton Roads continues to show that impact, continues to have that impact across the board here in the Commonwealth. Now, I also want to point out something else, is that not only were they all from Hampton Roads, but they were all on the Republican ticket. So that means there was a Republican sweep in the highest offices, statewide offices here in the Commonwealth. And that's going to be a change for the Commonwealth, because since really 2009-ish, we've had Democratic governors and Democratic administration represent us across the board. Yeah. So we had Northam the last 4 years. We had also, actually a little bit after that. So we had Northam, and then of course we had Terry McAuliffe represent us. So the last 8 years, prior, we've had Democratic governors, lieutenant governors, and attorney general. And speaking of attorney generals, we've not only had the Democratic attorney general, we had different governors, because here in the Commonwealth, the governor cannot run for consecutive terms, but they can run for terms. They have to skip a year, which is why Terry McAuliffe was able to run again this particular year. But Mark Herring actually served 2 consecutive terms as attorney general. And if he would have won, probably could have been one of the longest serving attorney generals here in the Commonwealth. And of course, we had the opportunity to elect the second African-American male as lieutenant governor here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, Justin Fairfax. So, that shows, how the Commonwealth has actually progressed over the years. Bob McDonnell was our last Republican governor before Terry McAuliffe. And then also after that, of course, our current governor, Ralph Northam. Now, when we talk about the administration going out. Of course, last year we did a year in review. We talked about the administration moving forward, the administration itself, the things that they've done. We know that Governor Northam here came to NSU and announced the largest investment in Norfolk State University to date. We know that investment in HBCUs, state HBCUs, increased almost $500 million, actually a little bit over $500 million, since he was in office. Now, we're not talking about annual operating expense. We're not talking about that. But we're talking about moving forward and getting additional funding for things that we've always needed. New facilities, monies for new programming, monies for our students to be able to help them with the cost of enrollment in education. And it hasn't stopped there. So in the proposed budget, we've been able to secure, again, proposed budget. It hasn't gone into effect just yet. We're actually moving in that direction. But our proposed budget, in order to get new facilities, new dining facilities, new dormitories, another phase 2 of the new dormitories that we have here, new funding for students, again, to help with the cost of attending, and also new planning dollars for additional facilities that we have coming up in order to serve the needs of the students. And we're not going to stop there, but we're continually looking forward in order to secure more funding for many different initiatives that we have across the board. Now, with that, that means that that's all proposed. And with that proposal, we have engagement with the new administration who's going to be sworn in. The Republican administration that's going to be sworn in this month in a couple of weeks, and they're going to take up the reins. So it's not just a new governor, lieutenant governor, and an attorney general. We're going to get to what day one looks like, Marvin, for our new governor. But we also have a Republican House. So that means that the last House that we had, which was a Democratic control House, and we talked about the things that took place and laws going into effect. That was because of the Democrats in charge of the House, increasing minimum wage, making sure that elections have the most exposure, making sure that persons are being able to be elected across the board in their areas, their districts in which they are representing. And not only that, but also transparency as relates to pricing in pharmacy and drugs that we take for our health. Now we're going to switch across the aisle to the Republican side. So what are some of the agenda items that this new administration is looking at? What are some of the issues that they're looking to take up, to champion for the people of the Commonwealth? So let's take a look at day one. What does day one look like for our governor-elect, Glenn Youngkin? So we know Glenn Youngkin's background is that he is from the private sector, private equity firm, one of the co-founders of the Carlyle Group. And he's one who also is from this area, worked his way through college, playing basketball and the like, and loves the Commonwealth because he's back here wanting to be a public servant. So he has something that he placed on his website and one of the campaign promises. It's called Day One Game Plan. This is a Day One game plan. It looks at several areas. We look at cutting costs for Virginians, keeping communities safe, reinvigorating job growth, restoring excellence in education, and making government work for you. So I know those are categories, but let's delve into it just a little bit to see exactly what his day one is for the Commonwealth and what his plan is to keep his promises. So he said that according to Game One Day Plan, it includes eliminating the Commonwealth's grocery tax and suspending a recent gas tax increase for 12 months. Let's talk about the grocery tax. So current Governor Ralph Northam actually proposed to eliminate the grocery tax in one of his proposals before going out. That's interesting because Governor Northam mentioned that he actually was for eliminating the grocery tax when he was lieutenant governor. And this is an idea that he ran on and believed that it should take place. We also have now the governor-elect saying that he's going to eliminate the grocery tax. So I guess it's safe to say
Grocery tax will be eliminated.
Grocery. Exactly. So, so when we talk about eliminating, the hardship on our citizens of Commonwealth, grocery tax is definitely one of them. So that's very interesting in itself that they both agree. And as we go through this day one game plan, we're going to find that our two governors are not too far apart on issues. Now, there are some issues that they are night and day on. But for the most part, they're not too far apart when we delve into the facts and pull the covers off. So look for the grocery tax after this legislative session to be done with. So more money in your pocket. We know that food is going up. So there's more opportunity for you to have more monies in your particular pocket. Now, let's take a look at those other areas that he wants to impact in cutting costs for Virginians. This is Governor-elect Glenn Youngkin. He wants to suspend a recent gas tax for 12 months. Well, we know that gas is going up. It's part of what we've seen, the trend of prices increasing. But if the gas tax is suspended, the question becomes, where is that revenue going to come from to cover what the gas tax is actually paying for? Now, it probably made sense during the time of COVID where persons weren't driving as much. But now that we're getting the economy back going, now that we have individuals going to and fro, traveling more often, does it make sense in order to cut the recent gas tax? We don't know. We'll see because, again, where's that funding going to come from?
And does it just balance out with the raise of minimum wage?
That's another question. And a lot of times when we see price increase, we see minimum wage increase, we also see price increase to quote unquote cover the cost of minimum wage increase. But the other argument to that is when prices go up and minimum wage doesn't go up, what does that profit go to? So again, it's a perspective. What perspective are you looking at? And really, which perspective are you benefiting from? So that's really the give and take of the yin and yang of economics. Also, Governor-elect Youngkin promised to give a one-time tax rebate of $600 to joint filers in Virginia and $300 for individuals. So that means that with a tax rebate, that means that if you owe taxes, that $600 is going to be applied to it, I'm assuming, and then whatever's left, you'll receive back. Or if you don't owe taxes, you're going to get $600 anyway. And you're going to get, if you're married, $300 if you're individual. So the rebate, I see it as it going into effect in one or two ways. Either you're going to get a check in the mail for $300 if you're single, $600 if you're married, or you're going to get it added to as a credit to your taxes. So I believe the way the rebate will work, as it's worked in the past, is that you're going to actually get a $600 check and a $300 check. Now, the last time this happened, President George W. Bush was president. He came in office when he was elected the first time. I believe this was 2001, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And he actually provided a $600 rebate to married couples and $300 to single. So individuals got checks in the mail for that. So what happens? Does this help the bottom line? Of course, getting more money, in your bank account for yourself actually is a good thing. But again, where does the money come from? Does it come from the amount of reserves that we have? Where does this funding come from? So again, that's the question. If we're giving money back, where are we getting it from? Hopefully we're not going to borrow it. I don't think we're going to borrow it because we're flush with cash right now. So how will this help you as an individual? And if this passes, which is very likely it will, we know the grocery tax is going to pass, right? So that's eliminated.
That's that.
The suspension of the gas tax, not so sure about it. But we do know that we do have a governor control mansion. We have a House that's Republican control, but we also have a Democratic control Senate. So where's the fight in that? Where would this bill stop? where will the buck stop as it relates to certain bills? Now, we know that economics is important to both sides. I don't care if you're an independent, Republican, Democrat, or if you don't vote at all, which if you don't, you should. I'm just saying. But everybody lives and dies based on economics. So being able to prosper and be prosperous is very important. All right, so let's take a look at the other points on the day one game plan as it relates to cutting costs for Virginians for Governor-elect Youngkin. For property taxes, he plans to require voter approval for any property tax increases. I think that's a good thing. When we talk about increasing property taxes or millages, which on the local level, what we call it, it's voters who are property owners should have the ability to give a say-so in the increase of their property tax. Now, that's kind of the nuance of this. If you're not a property owner, should you be voting for me to increase my property taxes? Now, will you ever be a property owner? Now, personal property tax is different because everybody has personal property tax if you have a vehicle. Well, maybe not everybody, right? So a lot of people don't. Some people may not have vehicles, but for the most part,
there's a larger group of people than the other property tax.
Absolutely. So more people have vehicles than actually own physical property or homes. So is it fair for an individual who does not have or own that to actually do that? I'm not sure. But again, that's up for debate. Also, lastly, as it relates to cutting costs for Virginians, day one game plan, Youngkin said that he intends to double the standard deduction for Virginians and cut taxes on veteran retirement pay. Well, this is actually something that happened during Donald Trump's presidential administration, where they doubled the standard deduction. And it's funny because we believe it was decades ago when a bill was passed in the federal government to allow for mortgage us to deduct payments paid to our mortgage. And we believe that, hey, that provision was never going to go away. Well, when individuals were preparing their taxes, you had the opportunity to do itemized deduction and have your mortgage deducted, or take the double deduction, standard deduction. And what happened was many individuals, over 50%, saw a better rate of return by taking the standard, doubling the standard deduction, as opposed to using their mortgage or itemized for their mortgage. And we thought in that particular bill, that mortgage standard was never going to go away. It's still there on the books, but it's not as advantageous as it used to be. So these are very, very nuanced. These are nuances that are very interesting that we see really helps to change a lot of what we do. What we thought was going to be forever, it's not forever anymore. So I thought that was very interesting. But also, as I said, cutting veterans' retirement pay, I think, is a good thing. We know that here in Hampton Roads, we have the largest concentration of retired veterans in the entire United States. We also have one of the largest military installations here in the United States. We know we got the largest naval base in the world here in Norfolk. So this is good for our veterans to have more spending capital, more money to spend of the pay that they've earned, that they sacrificed their lives for us and our freedoms. And it also gives them an opportunity to have more buying power, which then comes back into our economy and helps all of us. So again, I don't think anyone would argue with the retirement of veterans pay, but the question becomes, where are we getting the money from to pay for it? Not just one time, like the rebate, but where is this additional funding coming from? So that's the question. And that's what we're actually going to have to figure out in this new legislative session. let's take a look at keeping our community safe. So Governor-elect Glenn Youngkin said that day one game plan, he's going to call for defunding police that have gained traction across the U.S. He said he intends to fully fund law enforcement and protect qualified immunity. Also, he's going to put an emphasis on the Virginia Parole Board and his intentions to fire the entire board and replace it. Now, this is where I said earlier that our current governor and governor-elect are not too far apart from certain issues, like the grocery tax, but others, they are night and day. This is night and day. So let me address first the defund the police. So we know that during the time of social reckoning and accountability, social justice, Black Lives Matter movement across the world, that was a catchphrase that was picked up on the other side to say this is a bad thing. They want to defund the police. And that's not what the movement was about. It wasn't about taking funding away from the police. It was making the funding more effective that the police were utilizing. Instead of buying tanks and armored vehicles, putting that money toward community and ensuring that there's an investment of policing and working with the community as opposed to actually terrorizing the community. Now, we also do see there's an uptick in violent crimes across the board. Many people say this is because of what happened with Black Lives Matter movement. But in actuality, this is a result of coming out of isolation and COVID. This is a result of that type of stress that was put on people during the time of COVID, and we see this uptick. At the same time, we do need to keep our community safe. So it's not about defunding the police. Everybody needs police. We love our police. We love our police to be a part of our community. We love our police to protect us in our community. We love our police, our children to look up to our police as friends and not as enemies, and vice versa. But it's not about defunding, but it's about making sure that the funding that we provide police departments, which they do deserve, is used and made more effective across the board to not just decrease crime, but eliminate it. Because it's a partnership between police and community. The community's got to step up, just like our police department has stepped up and continue to step up here in the Commonwealth, especially the city of Norfolk. We had our community forum here in the area on the campus of Norfolk State University as a partnership with our mayor to find solutions to these common problems that we have in our community. So, but again, that's a catchphrase, and he's running on that catchphrase. So, fully funding the police department, I don't think there's going to be an issue with that. But protecting qualified immunity, that's where you're going to have the fight. The question becomes, should police officers, law enforcement officials have a blanket, quote unquote, get out of jail free card if they make a mistake, or if the mistake itself is intentional? And that's what qualified immunity, I think a lot of persons have issues with, where there's an intent or a breaking of a rule of a law in order to, quote unquote, police. I think that's where the issue is. And I think a lot of persons, that's where the fight's going to be, and the communication about the emphasis across qualified immunity. Firing the parole board. Now, we know that parole itself in the Commonwealth, we really don't have parole per se, but there are provisions that are provided with the parole board that allows individuals to get out that show that they have been rehabilitated and can be productive to their community to get out before their sentence ends. So if Governor-elect Youngkin is going to fire the entire board, which he can, and replace it, whom is he going to replace the board with? Obviously, individuals who are the opposite belief of individuals who are currently on the parole board. So is that a way of keeping our community safe? We'll see. Also, he plans to launch more community programs to address issues within the Commonwealth mental health system. Again, I think that's something that we're all on board with. We saw what happened in the pandemic, Marvin. A lot of mental health issues came to the forefront. A lot of people were dealing with mental health issues in the past that tried to cover it up and were able to kind of mask it. But the pandemic said, no, you can't mask it anymore. And our Commonwealth stepped up to the plate and said, listen, we've got to do more about this. This is a real issue. And it looks like, again, our governor's on board with this particular issue. Also, a couple other areas, reinvigorating job growth. Governor-elect Youngkin, he said he plans to add 400,000 jobs and 10,000 startups to Virginia's economy by cutting regulations, launching new development programs, and enacting small business holiday tax and ending taxes on rebuild VA and PPP loans. I don't think it's going to get pushback from that. I think, again, adding jobs, creating startups. We know we have our innovation center downtown Norfolk. We know that we have students and community persons who are engaged in that particular startup that are seeing great gains, that are getting the foundation they need to have a better business, to have a better sense of what to do when they're in business. I think this is a win across the board. What are those programs? How are they going to be launched? Are they going to be effective? That's the question. But the fact that he wants to do it, I think, is a win across the board for all of us here in the Commonwealth. Finally, let's look at education. Now, under his day one game plan, restoring excellence in education, he talks about COVID and how COVID has impacted students' ability to access in-person learning. He plans to keep students in the classroom 5 days a week and in as safe as possible manner. Now, we know we've had the surge of the new variant of COVID, and we know that it spread exponentially, very easily. You could just cough and you can get this new variant with someone in a close proximity. So being able to keep our students safe, our kids safe who are not vaccinated because of the age range is imperative, because they're going back home to older people, some that may be vaccinated, some, even if you are, we know that this new variant is causing you to become infected with COVID, but less severe, or even maybe our senior citizens. So we have to make sure that when we're taking our classrooms and our students into account, we're taking into account their total health and their total home. Also, he looks to rebuild crumbling schools, raising teacher pay, and investing in special education. And not only that, he says that he's looking to invest in at least 20 new charter schools to offer parents choice in their children's education. Charter schools have been controversial across the board, even since the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. So the verdict is still out on charter schools and their effectiveness and their impact on the funding of public schools, because a lot of those funds are taken from public schools and given to charter schools with less rules and regulations. But being able to rebuild common schools, being able to increase teacher pay, I think is a win across the board. You're not going to get any pushback from me. And I don't think you're getting pushback from individuals and communities where their schools need to be rebuilt, should be rebuilt, and teachers deserve their pay increase.
Yes.
And Governor Northam has proposed that in his outgoing budget as well. So we're excited. We're excited about not just what's proposed, but we're excited about what's happening, what's going to happen here in the Commonwealth. But it all depends upon you. It depends on the community. It depends upon your level of engagement. Well, you hear the music, and that means that our first show of 2022 has come to an end. Marvin, it seems like every time we get into it, we start discussing these very important issues, time flies. But the great thing about it is that you'll hear us again every Sunday at 1 p.m. here on WNSB Hot 91, the new sound of VA, broadcasting live on the campus of the Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation. Once again, we want to thank you, the listeners, for tuning in and giving us your time, but not just your time, but your commitment to working in your community to make it a better place for you, your family, and the Commonwealth of Virginia. This is Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and we will see you next week. God bless.